Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So this time it's gonna be a list discussion video about my ETC Knights of the Sun Griffin list. So in conclusion, after all the battle reports, I took it to the ETC. I made 89 points, which I thought was quite a decent value. And yeah, that was mostly due to the list, to be honest, in my view. And also because other people underappreciate the list. So that is always a good thing to have at your advantage. This video I'm just gonna walk through the list, tell you what all of the pieces do and why I think it works as well as it does. So let's start just with the character setup. First off, we have a Knight Commander as a general. This is because, well, I'm gonna play a lot of armor, I'm gonna play a lot of cavalry. Knight Commander makes the Electoral Cavalry fearless, which is actually quite a big deal. And also it makes it a parent unit, which is even a bigger deal. So the only reason for him to be in the list is basically that. And yeah, Discipline 9 in general is just fine enough. And then the tool out, so I want him to be kind of survivable, but I also don't want to overspend on him. So a naked Knight Commander would be 175 points. In the end, I end up with a 325 point model, which is fine. The Cavalry pick Titanic Might is a very nice combination to have, especially if you combine it with a Prelate, because that means you have 4 attacks at offensive 6 with Hatred at strength 7 with AP 3. AP 3 is usually enough. Yeah, Titanic Might, strength 7 is usually enough. And the alternative would be to give him the Light of Sun style or something else in terms of magical weapons. I wouldn't really know what, because you actually want to use a shield on this guy, because then you go to a 1-up armor save. Otherwise you would have to buy a shield or a heavy armor, plate armor enchantment, and that quickly gets more expensive. So cost-wise, I think this is in a really good spot, the Cavalry pick with Titanic Might. One further advantage you have is that you can still buff it up with Perception of Strength for those very few matchups where you would need Strength 8 AP for. Yeah, so he has this Shield of Volant. This makes him immune to Lethal Strike and Battle Focus for 15 points. So basically this is a guarantee that you can use your 1-up armor save. There's not a lot of stuff in the game with AP higher than 3, and you have double Perception of Strength to lower the AP of the opponent. So it is quite a survivable piece in this way, and for 15 points that is just a steal. Obsidian Rock to give the unit of cavalry a bit of magic resistance, and because I had some spare points on this guy rather than the others. And then the Potion of Swiftness, this is specifically for a couple of matchups, most notably Vermin Swarm with the Secrets of the Doomblade, and otherwise not that many where it's really important, so maybe you can actually take it out now. Yeah, you could take it out. You can just have a character that'll die to the Doomblade probably. Yeah, so that was my setup. I was quite happy with it in the sense that I didn't really feel like I needed anything more. Shield of Volant came in handy when I was fighting Gortax. Yeah, and you don't really need an Aegis save because, well, the only Aegis saves you can get are the 5-up Aegis from the Talisman of Shielding, which is always decent, but then again, it's 50 points. Are you gonna ever gonna use it? Not so much. It's mostly to dissuade your opponents anyway from striking at your Knight Commander. It does work against snipes, obviously, magical snipes, but then again, you have, together with the Marshal, you're gonna have magic resistance 4, so that kind of tones down that aspect of sniping. Yeah, so that is that guy basically. Also, you see quite a lot of people taking the Winter Cloak on this guy to give him distracting and an Aegis. However, you already get distracting from the Arcane Engine, so that's a bit of an anti-synergy. And I think the Cavalry is one of the most important units to be close to for the Arcane Shield. So let's go to the next entry on the list. That's going to be the Wizard on the Arcane Engine. This is one of the pieces that makes the list work, and also one of the pieces that combines very well with the Knights of the Sun Griffin. So the Knights of the Sun Griffin, they have defense 4, together with distracting from the Arcane Engine. You go to defense 4 with distracting, which is pretty good. If you knock on a no-die enemy, then most of the enemy troops are going to be hitting you on 5 up. And yeah, it's one of the aspects of this list is that you're generally just really tanky. So damage output is not that much of an issue if you don't take any damage yourself. And that is what this list is kind of built towards. So with distracting for everyone and the bound perception of strength, and then an adept on cosmology, you have double perception of strength. So you can cast it twice, and reducing the AP most notably from your opponent in 2 steps. That goes really well with the cavalry and the Knights of the Sun Griffin. Then, well, just light armor, alchemist alloy for a 3-up armor save, Book of Arcane Mastery to empower your magic phase a little bit. And yeah, this guy I would also play just with the Electoral Cavalry. The advantage of combining it with the Knights of the Sun Griffin is that it is the same size as the Knights of the Sun Griffin. So you can hide behind the Knights of the Sun Griffin in order to not be able to get hit by artillery, for example. So that adds quite a bit to the survivability of this model. Then we go to the next one, the Wizard on Wizard Alchemy Adept with the Locket of Sana. So the Locket of Sana is a nice piece to include in your Electoral Cavalry bus once it starts to grow a bit. So I think that maybe you can also run a smaller Electoral Cavalry with less characters, most notably. But you should include the Knight Commander. If you grow out to become a big unit with like 4 characters of around 300 points, then it's going to be an expensive unit and it's worth it to put in a Locket of Sana. So any greater demon that charges in, you just duel it out. Any ogre scary character, you just duel it out. And it also protects your wizard. That is the most notable thing about this, because the entire unit is composed out of 1-up and 2-up armor save guys. Your wizard is kind of the weak spot there where the enemy can score combat res. He's still defense 3 with distracting, so a lot of people will hit him only a 4+. But then again, with only a 4-up armor save, you're not going to go that far. The alchemy is most notably for the Knights of the Sun Griffin. So you always take Word of Iron, because if you face someone who has AP 1, then it's going to make quite a difference. Because you have a 2-up armor save on the Knight of the Sun Griffin, you're going to go to a 1-up armor save. So instead of failing your armor saves on a 1 and a 2, you're going to fail just on a 1, meaning that you get half of the wounds in combat than you compared to whether you would have a 2-up armor save. So this piece, it's an extra spell. And it's Word of Iron. Alchemy brings you Glory of Gold, which is a very good spell because it gives you flaming attacks and a reroll to wound, and also an extra AP. And otherwise, yeah, having Quicksilver Lash in your army is really good, even though with Empire you already have it with any wizard because of the hereditary rules for Empire. Silver Spike is also good in combination with Ice and Fire from Cosmology, so you have 2 ranged spells that over time could do some damage. However, I found that in most matchups it's best to just take combat buffs. And then with the 2 mages together, you have a selection of buffs that you could think about. You would always take Perception of Strength with the Arcane Engine. And otherwise, you can take Altered Sight. Altered Sight is not that good, but it gives you some protection from ranged if there's really a lot of guys in one unit for the enemy, most notably. No-die enemy is a very big one. I prefer to take it on the Arcane Engine because it's a bit more mobile than the Wizard on Horse. just because the Wizard on Horse is kind of locked into the Electoral Cavalry unit. So you have Glory of Gold, which is a good spell, and then in Cosmology you have to, you don't really have any combat buffs further. Yeah, no, not really. No, so that is mostly the circulation that you go through. Then we go to the Marshal. Marshal is a BSB. He goes in the unit of Electoral Cavalry, double Aether icon to get to Magic Resistance 4, which is quite a big deal actually, because then suddenly this unit is quasi immune to Quicksilver Lash and a lot of the other nasty spells like Evocation Hasten the Hour, Touch of the Reaper, stuff like that. Because if you subtract 4 of the enemy casting roll, then it goes quite quick. And then the rest of his equipment has been geared towards fighting Sylvan Elves and Dread Elves. So he has paired weapon Supernatural Dexterity. Supernatural Dexterity gives him +2 agility, so he goes to agility 7. And you would say that it's not enough because elite elves, they can charge in with agility 6 and they go to agility 7 from the charge. That's why you have the Mantle of Ulor, so that the enemy doesn't get the +1 agility for charging. Funny thing now is that you're going to strike at agility 7. You're going to have 4 strength 4 attacks, so that's not that impressive. However, against naked elves, you can bring a dragon staff and add 2d6 strength 3 hits again to that. So his output against charging elves with like a 5-up armor save, he's going to go to offense 8 with hatred, so he's going to hit on 2+ or 3+. He's going to wound on 3+ with strength 4, and then he has a dragon staff, so he's going to kill like 5 elves normally, which can make quite a difference. Well, obviously it's 5 combat res, it's also 5 elves that don't get to strike. In combination with the Knight Commander here with the Potion of Swiftness, he goes to agility 9, so he will also strike first with Cavalry pick with Titanic Might. So that's another 3 or 4 dead elves. So yeah, for this one turn where your opponent thinks that he got you, this is your counter to that. Then we have a prelate on a horse with a shield with heavy armor, hand weapon, hammer of witches. So this is as cheap prelate I would run, I think. The only thing you need is the hammer of witches to up his combat performance a bit, because otherwise you're looking at 2 attacks, but 5 attacks is quite a bit more. The reason he's in the list is mostly because of the hatred on the Electoral Cavalry, and in hindsight I don't know if that is the right call, because you also tend to stick in the grind. However, having a reroll to hit on your cavalry pick and also your Electoral Cavalry rank and file hits is quite nice. It's a nice guarantee to get some hits in, and also the blessings, they are really good. So you have reroll to wound, which is really good, especially if you're strength 4 with AP 3. And the 5-up Aegis is also really good. Just for the scenarios where you face off against stuff that actually can go through your armor, having a 5-up Aegis can make quite a big difference. And he channels 1. Channel 1 is also good. In the end, you end up with channel 4 in this list, which is it's a very strong magic phase. Because all of the spells that you cast are really must-dispel spells for the enemy. Like you have your Bound Perception of Strength, you have then your normal Perception of Strength, you have Word of Iron. By that time you could have minimally used, I think, 6 dice. So a lot of cards already give you 6 dice. You often end up with actually 4 dice extra because of the channel 4. And then with 4 dice extra you can still do a no-die enemy somewhere. So yeah, that is really good, especially if you can take the no-die enemy on the Arcane Engine, because then you have to book off Arcane Mastery to cast a bubble for it. Yeah, so that is the prelate. Then we go to the Electoral Cavalry. So I was doubting for 1 second whether I would want cavalry picks or lances. Lancers give you +2 strength on the charge, however that is going to be a total of normally 7 attacks, and if you take 5 an extra rank on the unit as an order, then it's going to be 12 attacks. So 12 attacks is quite decent. 7 attacks, getting +2 strength on 7 attacks is not that worth it, because the rest of the unit already dishes out a lot of damage. So it's better to have an extra +2 AP all the time than to have a one-time +2 strength and 2 AP. Stalker standard, obviously, because in your list, in any tournament list, you need at least one unit that can go through terrain if you are planning to play a bit aggressively. Otherwise, you're gonna have to bite the dust. But yeah, especially with a cavalry focused list, you should have a Stalker standard on preferably at least one of your units, and the Electoral Cavalry are a good one for that, because then you can just park them in ruins, and then they're quite immune to shooting. And then we have 2 heavy infantry support units. I used to run them with 1 heavy infantry support unit, however 2 is really good, because, well, the Electoral Cavalry are a parent unit if the Knight Commander is in. Heavy infantry are a support unit, so practically you are quite immune to charges as long as you have a counter charge available, because a counter charge is you can set it up quite often in a way that you're going to get a flank at least. So you will have a charge, you will have a flank, you will have a big flank, you're going to have a banner, and then you're going to have probably at least 1 rank. If the enemy's really killy, then you're going to have just 1 rank, and otherwise you will have more than 1 rank. So that's a shift of like 5 or 6 combat res. Combined with the Arcane Engine, well, you have parry with defense 3, but well, you have parry, so that's a 4 up to hit. Distracting makes it a 5 up to hit. So these guys are more tanky than they seem to be. And also they're a really nice chaff unit, so you can just toss out 12 inches if you ever need it. 12 inches, yes, because you get +4 march from the march order. Yeah, that's that. Then I have 10 State Militia as a non-scoring piece in the list. So this is the one scenario that is not good for this list is obviously capture the flags, because there's a lot of flags and not that much non-flags. The State Militia, I don't know about them. You need something in the list that doesn't score. And in a lot of scenarios they were quite okay. And the biggest downfall of them is that they are insignificant to parent and support units, but not to Knights of the Sun Griffin. But then again, you can quite easily play around that by just angling stuff and positioning it in such a way that you don't have to take a panic test on your Knights of the Sun Griffin. Because panic tests are the worst for Knights of the Sun Griffin. So I have Banners of Discipline on 2 of them, and I have a Flaming Standard on the 3rd, because it is practically quite possible to keep one of the units at least within the Generals and BSB range, and the other 2, they're going to be probably out of on the flank, and an 8 with a reroll. I don't actually know the chances for that. I think it's gonna be like 60%ish to pass it on a single roll, so that would be 85% more or less to get it on the reroll. Yeah, you fail 10% of the time. It happens. It just happens. So if you can mitigate this a bit by giving them a reroll, that's great. If you can mitigate it by removing State Militia from your list or from their proximity, then it's even better. Because also, I think during the ETC I lost 2 units because of failed terror checks. I don't think I ever made a terror check with them when I was not within range of the general. So that is quite sad, but it's part of it, you know. Otherwise, the Knights of the Sun Griffin, I think they are a really solid choice And I think the reason why a lot of Empire of Sun style players are not too fond of them is because they don't really fit in the normal average Empire of Sun style list. Because in that list you would not have the combination of double perception of strength and word of iron, most likely. And they are quite bulky, whilst Empire is normally quite a static army. So you really need to look at your angles and really need to have everything in the right spot. And if you then have a unit that demands quite a lot of space, that is quite mobile and would like to use that mobility, but is just stuck in a bit of a static line, then it doesn't really work. So you need to have the space and the mobility, table space most notably, to work around with this unit. But the profile is actually quite good. I know that you don't get the support attacks from the Sun Griffins in the second rank, just for those who were wondering. But if you look at a unit that is 3 wide, then your combat performance is still quite decent. You have 9 attacks from the chicks with strength, with offensive 4, strength 5, AP 3. AP 3 is a big one there. And you have 7 attacks from the riders with offensive 4, strength 4. That's not very impressive, the riders, but they still dish out a couple of wounds every turn. And one of the big things is also that you're agility 4. So you will strike simultaneously with a lot of stuff, and you will strike before a lot of stuff as well. And I think a lot of people look at 6 Knights of the Sun Griffin and think that you should run them always 3 wide. The trick is you don't. So I've been shifting formation of the Knights of the Sun Griffin all the time in all of my battles. So 3 wide is for best mobility basically, because then you can just wheel a bit quicker. You can still swift reform obviously and just turn a bit with your 7 inches. But running them 4 wide is also really nice, because then you get an extra 3 attacks from the chick, and also stomps. Stomps are really great if you're strength 5 AP 3. It's like, oh, you're a dwarf with plate armor, okay, stomp. You just lost 3 guys because I have 4 stomps, something like that. It's really decent. And then combined with an Arcane Engine, all the different spells. So yeah, they are really tanky. And basically the end result is that you have a unit, well, you have 18 wounds per unit. So that's another factor, that if you face off like alchemy magic, then that's also fine. It's Quicksilver Lash is going to do D3 plus 1 hits, and they wound on 2+. Sure, that's 1 dead chicken. So you have 18 wounds in your unit. Your opponent has to do this 6 turns in a row at the same unit in order to delete 1 unit. That's his entire magic phase, nearly, or at least half of it. So I've had quite some opponents that were quite eager to face me with alchemy magic, and they were casting Quicksilver Lash at my Knights of the Sun Griffin, and I was like, well, yeah, go ahead. I mean, I'm gonna lose a chicken. What does this chicken do? It gives me 1 support attack. So at the moment of casting, it's not that influential. It's just some extra. It's a buffer that you basically buy for your units. And yeah, that's also with the Electoral Cavalry. That's why I have 15 of them. These are not the numbers that you need to get through a combat. These are the numbers that you need to bring to make sure that you can go through your combat, rather than to face off the enemy in your best case scenario, where you have your full unit once you go into combat. Yeah, so 6 Knights of the Sun Griffin. In this list they work, because you have the mobility and the setup for them to work. Yeah, with that in mind, I think I'm just gonna rewrite a list a bit. It's gonna be a separate video, I figure, because this one's taking quite a long time by now. So thank you for watching, and hopefully see you in the next video.